Next up, it's time for a talk from Michael Meeks, CEO of Collabora Productivity. Michael, take it away.
Thank you so much, Reese. Well, it's great to be here and to talk to you a little bit about some of the exciting stuff we're doing for Ubuntu in the next release. So this is one of the existential questions that people suffer with, you know. Should I use the web app or this rather different and slightly weird desktop app, right? And the problem here is often that people create two different applications, one for the web and one for the desktop, and then, you know, features appear in one and then they don't appear in the other, or you know, it's just very, very strange. And the documentation becomes increasingly confusing. And the world can fill with this kind of message that seems to suggest that you should always use the native desktop app. You know, that the world is full of unsupported and difficult things to do that you can't get done. And the problem can get worse and worse and worse until, well, you end up with entirely different apps. One for one side, one for the other. And it's not very clear who's using what. Of course, you can market that you put them all under one big brand and claim everyone's using something. But actually, at the end of the day, one of the things we're trying to do is try and make a really full-fat, full-feature Office productivity suite that works really well on both sides. So really getting one code base then working in those two worlds. This is something we've actually done for years at Collabora, but not actually really told anyone about. So our Android app, for example, if you put a big screen on it and a nice keyboard, suddenly it would turn into something beautiful. I think if you look back at the Ubuntu Touch Vision back then, there was some similar stuff there. You know, this magic phone that turns into a real application, a desktop app. And same for our iPhone app, but no one really knew about it. And so that actually gives a whole load of advantages. If you can bring your code natively to run, there's a whole load of good things you can do. So of course, first, offline support, very important. So when you're in the train or you're on the go, you can have your data there and you can edit. Similarly, potentially low latency if you're on a very, very high latency connection. You know, you're on a GPRS or something like this. You know, you can get that high performance locally and edit there nicely. But perhaps more important than that, and this is slightly where my story breaks down, the web actually restricts a whole lot of APIs that you can't really use very well. So for example, the clipboard is very, very worried, the web browser, that you might have a JavaScript app that's polling your clipboard and sucking all of those passwords you're copy and pasting on your desktop around. And so it kind of locks down clipboard APIs pretty vigorously. A multi-screen and projector detection, browsers are worried that you might be fingerprinting, you know, your JavaScript app. You know, you can't put a cookie on your machine, you can't use, you know, various kinds of tracking technologies, but maybe we could just look at all the peripherals plugged in and then work out who you are, fingerprint you that way. So silly things like just being able to detect you're in a multi-screen setup and manage that nicely are actually quite hard to do. But with a native desktop app, we can use the web piece and get this right as well. And then printing APIs, just finding out what printers you have connected, what paper size there is and so on, and various other pieces that are just nice to have. So we have been bringing Collabora Online to desktop, and of course, the Ubuntu desktop as well, via the means of snap packaging. And you can see there the great degree of similarity, you know, and feature set and so on. It's essentially exactly the same thing. Pretty translated, friendly, welcome slideshows. And of course, we continue to do stuff with the classic stuff that maybe is familiar to you. Lots of icons there, but perhaps a different UI. And so then something more discoverable, efficient, better user experience based on lots of user feedback and research and behavior, and of course that critical snap package. So there's some complementarity there. You're probably aware of Collabora Office Classic or the LibreOffice-based product there, and of course we'll continue doing that, but there's some differences than the new thing. So we've been able to free ourselves from a number of these constraints, you know, the Java, the database engine. In the modern world, you know, we think it's probably better to use different database technologies. And, you know, there are a number of things we're pulling out there so that we can go quicker, be smaller and leaner. And collaboration is really key. I mean, we're called Collabora. Here's one of the slightly sad pictures of collaboration online. And this is a log graph on the axis. And people ask me, why does the scale go backwards? Well, I've, in later life, suffered becoming a business person. And it's a very sad existence, you know. I want to be programming, but instead I have to please customers. I mean, you know, that's all good. Now, but graphs, in theory, in the business world, should go up and to the right. And so, you know, for my sake, humor me there. But the basic punchline is on the right-hand side, and I will wield my laser at this point. And it doesn't show on the screen. Never mind. You can see it's going up vigorously. 73,000 people are collaborating by themselves. What a sad, lonely world it is, you know? But then again, we've got 2,000 people who are collaborating with one other person, and then, you know, the rest of it is only 1 and a bit okay. So, you know, the 90+% use case that we can capture when you're offline, running on your desktop and so on, is just that. But the real key that makes this so useful when you're in a collaborative environment is knowing you're editing the right document. You know, it's not the obsolete one. It's not the one with the bits that weren't included yet. It's actually the right one to use. And so this seems to be really the key to collaborative editing. Why do I tell you this? Well, because there's some really fun stuff coming soon. So whilst you're running offline, while you're running locally, we really want to be mediating those transitions that do happen between one user and many users. So how do we do that? Well, it turns out that each of our apps on each of our platforms, mobile, you know, Ubuntu, in the browser, and even WebAssembly version running in the browser, so you can run that offline. All of these actually embed the same technology, and they have the same collaboration functionality built into them, wrapped up inside that. So that's really kind of cool. And that does mean that when we have a remote cool server, we can start to go, oh, well, there's no one actually editing this document. So there's a central point here, the remote server, that if you're online, we can connect to it and go, there's no one else editing. Just carry on. Knock yourself out. And we can fetch the files through that and enforce permissions and do all sorts of good stuff. But when someone else comes, we can get a message going, whoa, wait a minute, someone else wants to edit. We should do something exciting. Let's save that back, collaborate, and upload. And we have all of this working now nicely. It's in a prototype. It's not quite there in 2604, but it's coming. You can play with it if you check out the code. So this is really, really exciting. And so that then allows all of these different kinds of Collabora Online to then collaborate together and work nicely, while simultaneously working well offline, which is really cool. Of course, once you're offline for long enough on a contented document, there's lots of other people going to edit it, and there's not much you can do about that. There are lots of clever stories about CRDTs and other things like this, operational transforms, but in the end, you can end up with something so confusing, with an undo history that's so impossible to deal with, and you're going to really struggle to serialize the things that you need into the file format. So anyway, you end up having to diff two documents. That's the punchline. So we spend a lot of time then doing this side-by-side change tracking so that you can see what was here and what isn't there and what's on this side and what isn't there, so that you can very easily compare and see those document changes in the context as they were intended. And this is partly to avoid me getting hassle from people saying, you know, it's still red and it's got a strike through in it. And I've tried formatting it and getting rid of the red color and it doesn't go away, you know? It's like, oh dear, never mind. Anyway, so this is change tracking, or redlining as they call it. And so we can just make that so much easier for people to use, normal people, able to compare documents and make something good. So there's another thing that we're doing, which is essentially moving a whole load of stuff into the browser. So this is an ongoing process. And when I say the browser, I mean, of course, the desktop app as well. It's just, I guess, a different piece of the desktop app as all those processes run. So obviously, at the moment, we have pixel tiles, which are rendered on the server. But we have all of the menus, the toolbars, the sidebars, the dialogues, the cursors, the selections, all of that stuff rendered as overlays on the client. So it's very snappy and fast. And so you can zoom and pan and move around, which is nice. But we're essentially incrementally moving more and more into the browser of that document model to provide even better responsiveness. So we're starting now, and this is under development, currently in our latest branch, to move the rendering into a glyph space, a vector space, so that we can move all of that then into the client and have that rendered and memory managed there. And that's particularly exciting because it starts to mean that as you type, we can then do some fun stuff. So we can bring some of the CRDTE sort of stuff, or at least operational transforms, and we can start providing absolutely instant feedback as you type and you edit without even a heartbeat or a blink's worth of delay, and then reconcile that on the back end, perhaps a second or so later. So that's pretty exciting. Other things we've been doing, and much of this work has gone back into LibreOffice, so perhaps you'll have seen some of it there, is just getting better at these trillions of existing documents out. And this really is a real number. I mean, it's a very big sort of a number, but do your own research. Check it out. There are really a very large number of documents in this wonderful Microsoft file format. You can see Anyway, we have the open document format, which we're a fan of, but that's not what we get. Often we get these existing documents. So we've been working really, really hard and building metrics and then burning them down to dramatically improve our Microsoft OpenXML interoperability and generation with a whole lot of automated testing. And this is built on some huge test suite of the very worst bug documents we can find and burning that right down. And that's exciting. And some of the blue stuff at the end there you'll see is things where we can actually write this into Microsoft format, but Microsoft Word can't understand it. So for example, images and footnotes. We can put an image and anchor it in a footnote, and the format can store that, but it just can't be interpreted on the other side. So we have to find some sad way to flatten these things. So let me just whiz through very quickly a few new features since last year, because people like new things, perhaps. So we've been doing a whole load of data-driven changes. We've been watching our own users in-house, and we've been seeing what they do, particularly what they undo, because that's even more interesting, and trying to correlate what things go with what other things. When you've done something, what do you do next? And trying to then improve that. One of the things people love to do, of course, is buy huge screens. Look at this beautiful huge screen here. And then you need to drag your mouse, be able to pixel position on this thing. You need a bigger actual physical desk. So either you can get a power-assisted mouse, or you can put the toolbar much closer to what you're trying to do, which we've been doing there nicely. Improving discoverability. Lots of course, you shouldn't be using the mouse at all. You should be using keyboard shortcuts. So why don't we put some of those in the tooltips and make that easy to do. Two-page views, just other features to make it easier to see what's going on. Editing large documents, really nice feature. I'm a fan of this one. So I do a lot of contract work I mentioned my slightly boring job these days. And so that involves redlining contracts and taking risks and doing all sorts of clever things and building relationship with our wonderful partners and customers. One of the things that happen is that we often disagree about something. So they want something in, I don't want it in, they want it in again. So you end up with this document where something's been deleted. And I was thrilled to be screen sharing with a lawyer the other day and noticed that this deleted thing should go back in. We really need that thing. And what they would do is they would reject the change, select the text, copy it, undo the rejected change, so it's still rejected, and paste it in again. Because it's extremely rude to reject someone else's change and without telling them. So you need to be able to track these things. And so now we have a button that effectively does that. It's so much easier. Select the text and say, no, I want it like it was, bang. And that's just really much easier to use. Such a simple innovation. We need some innovation in the office space, I think. So table styles, yes, just improving, someone has no taste. But anyway, they have lots of table styles. So you can make these things look as garish as you like. Improving tabs. So you click on a table and suddenly your notebook bar here switches to a whole load of table tools that are really nice to use. And there's a whole load of different context tabs there. So maybe you click on an image and there's a whole load of those different tools that we have built in just to make your images look beautiful. And yeah, lots of nice things happen here. So yes, this is some kind of new table design tab here. Perhaps you can see at the top. Better defaults and better ways of presenting those for the things that people most want to do when you start watching what they do. These are the things they like. Nicer ways of improving your presentations and getting layouts there nicely. And responsive UI design. So as you shrink this down to your small screen, it's really nice that you get just the thing you need. So it turns out of all of these things you need, this paragraph block there, for example, the bullet thing is the thing that is most frequently used, turning on and off bullets, which is why it's at the top left. It's the easiest to get to, easiest to see, and that's the one that sticks there when there's not enough space for this. And it turns out that's what you want, which is kind of cool. Who knew? Following the statistics is good. Nicer switching between viewing mode and edit mode. It turns out that something like 5/7 of people never edit the document they load. So let's just leave it in a viewing mode, make it easy to switch to editing. Per user sheet views is quite a nice feature that allows different teams to see different views of the same data. So they can filter and do this very nicely. It's a rather tricky feature for us to implement because we have a single engine that serves many views. Many other people have multiple engines, so they duplicate the Office suite many times and then try and synchronize it. We tend to have just one. But that means that we then need to render it in different ways for different layouts of the content, which is, well, yeah, more work. So we spend a lot of time doing that. Good fun. And now we can very quickly switch between lots of different views of people. And you say, well, why is that different? Surely you're just showing different rows as you filter or search and sort. And that's true. But you can also calculate based on these things. You can put formula in there that produce different numbers depending on how you filter, which is a little bit annoying, to put it mildly. Follow me presentations, a nice thing. So if you're sharing on your screen, we have a whole load of features that are good. As you get that big screen I was talking about earlier, which you really should for your productivity, make your hardware seem bigger. One of the things we really have is nice is this present in window. So you've got your video conference there, you can present in window, you can have your presenter console so you can see what's going on and still be sharing screens and windows with people rather than taking over your main screen. But there's this also follow me presentation, so you can bring many people into the same document and then they can follow you and then perhaps see the previous slide. They don't have to follow exactly as you're going. So perhaps they can't overtake you, but they can see previous things. Perhaps they're impaired and so they want to be able to reread the previous slide. So nice features there to help people follow. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a talk in the modern world without a mention of AI. So here we go. This is Clippy being consumed by our mascot. But there, what can you do? And this is off by default, I would point out. You have to turn it on. You don't need to have it there. Nothing requires it. But against that, we are a language and document creation tool. And you would hope that large language models have something good to say about document creation tools. At least that's my expectation. So we've done some initial support in Writer to make this nice and add a whole load of easy to use things at the side there. Help summarizing text, expanding it, going into detail. Hopefully not expanding. I'm fed up of overly verbose documents. We should make all documents half the size and life should be better. So yes, just making it very easy to insert those. Of course, it's very vital that we have more cats in the world. And so here is a pretty picture of a cat as generated by AI. But maybe you're making decisions, and spreadsheets are the key place to make business decisions, as you know. And so there are a whole lot of things that we can look at there. Is the data broken? Is there some fraud occurring in the numbers? There's a whole lot of quite clever analyses that can be done there by an AI at the back end. Improving this, using it as content, explaining it. What is it doing? Let me select this data, send it to an AI, and get it to explain it, which is quite fun. Of course, it always asks before pillaging your document for information, and it's not going to just suck it out without telling you. So, it's a budget comparison, and it shows you, and it'll tell you some of the highlights of it, but also you have these little clickable references there. Maybe you can see those. So you can click on that, and it'll take you to the cell, so you can follow that back, wind out, and see what the context is. So it's all very nice having this thing nailed on the side, but wouldn't it be better if it was actually everywhere and embedded, but of course clearly labeled? So here's this, help fix this error pop-ups built into some formula errors there. What's going on? Why does it do this? So then it'll tell you a little bit about the formula, where it's going, what's likely to be wrong, and try and help fix it for you, which is kind of good. And we have some MCP support as well. So actually, if you're running this on your Ubuntu server, you can feed your documents in and the AI can then crunch them remotely, which is really, really cool. Obviously, that's not turned on in the snap. So yeah, just a few distinctives then about what we're doing. So of course, 100% open source code, no weird open washing licenses, zero Russian comments. I point this out merely for information. We don't have any, actually, as far as I'm aware, in the source code. And built around an open document standard. Your document model really shouldn't be owned by a global hegemon. It should be built by a collaboration of engineers and interested persons trying to make a beautiful document format for everyone. And we develop everything in the open. So we have commits going in every day by the real people that committed them, public tickets, public developer calls, all are welcome there. There's a fun and open community, and we'd love you to contribute to that. Please do get involved. And of course, lots of integrations with all kinds of products on the side. So before I go, I would point out that I write a comic, and you're most welcome to read it. It's probably quite funny, or not. And it's called The Open Road to Freedom. And it's all about communities and building them and companies and the tensions and joys of working together. And it should be fun, a little mascot that goes with it. So let me just conclude very quickly. So Collabora Office bridges this web and desktop thing. It brings the same code base to both platforms so that you don't have to sacrifice feature and function, at least not beyond what the web browser currently limits. And hey, the web is getting better at allowing more and more things. It gives you powerful collaboration, and that's coming to a snap soon near you. And actually, you can install it even now in the Edge version in the Snap Store, I believe. And we're focused on usability, So we really like to make this more and more easy to use and gripping for people. We have great interoperability, and we have this optional, rich AI integration. And we're really, really grateful to so many people out there on Ubuntu and elsewhere who contribute and make Collabora Office the awesome piece of software that helps people liberate themselves from their digital oppression into a new world of free software and digital sovereignty. Thank you so much for being here, and please do get involved. Thank you.